So the first thing that we did is we set up a pilot, and because we had this existing platform, we could just test the new stuff and keep the existing stuff as it is, and give some of these new things to a select group of pilot users who we also can communicate with and sort of talk around the rough edges a little bit, and at least get the actual stuff in the hands of real users. And I think yesterday we heard about validity and ecological validity of stuff. So we really care about that because it's a lot of these things you can't really lab test because they are about real tasks and real jobs and real data. And if you try to mock it or do it in a lab, it's quite difficult. So that's what we did first. So we actually moved the moment where we add value, at least for these pilot users, a lot earlier. And more importantly, we also start learning much sooner because we already can learn from people who are using these features much earlier. What we did, though, because it's a pilot, is we didn't actually realize the functionality the way that we completely intended it, because that would, we figured that that's going to take quite long. So we actually did quite I guess, a bit of a dirty thing, and we just used some drag and drop UI toolkit that came with the software that we were already using internally. Salesforce, and we just looked at how close can we get, and actually turns out that something that we would take quite a few weeks to build properly, we could drag and drop together in 5 days. Even though as a designer, it sort of hurts me a little bit, but as a UX professional, it sort of excites me that we can do this and we can actually get pretty close, at least in spirit, to what we want this functionality to be like, and give it to people and start seeing how they use it. So the second thing we did is we also set up a experimentation track where we actually do think about how we want things to end up. So we sort of a bit less constrained by reality and a little bit more. We think a little bit more about how we, where we think we want to end up, so that we can test that with users as well. So we do quite a lot of mockups, and then we take those mockups and either we go to users in their natural habitat and we ask them how they would use it, or we invite them to our offices and then have them look at it. And these are usually not really fully functional prototypes. It's not a usability test, but we do learn a lot from how they interact with it, and especially when they come to our offices, it means that we can invite a lot of stakeholders and business people to also look at this and sort of be part of the process, because we don't want to end up in a situation where we just drop all of these things in the end and then say, ah, ta-da, we made this new thing. We actually really try to keep people involved. Then the next step is actually, we've thought of all this stuff, but it still needs to work with the existing business. And I think, we've already touched on that before. This can be quite painful, because you can come up with a new thing, and actually it turns out that for your new for your design to work in this way, actually the business needs to change how they work. And we also find that things like service blueprints and journey maps, they really help here, because there's sort of like this shared language between designers and business people, because they can understand this. So at the top we can draw what we want the customer to experience, and at the bottom is what we expect the business to be doing, and then we can actually see how far that is from how things work, and actually, if it's realistic, to change some of those things. It's like a good discussion piece, because you can just look at this together and see if it's going to work. And then the final thing that we did, and actually this is still a work in progress, is closing the loop with and by making sure that we're actually continuously learning from what we're doing. So one of the things that we're doing is we have a recurring research session. So every 3 weeks we have a chance to talk to users and learn from it. But still, 3 weeks is quite a long time. And what it also means is, a research session, you need to prepare. You need to think of a hypothesis. You need to think of questions. You need to sort of decide. It's like you're going to get whatever you put into it. Like, so there's not a lot of. So you only get value from it if you ask the right questions. But what we also want to do is sort of find out things that that are answers to questions that we didn't even know we had. And we're using things like analytics. We're measuring quite a lot of satisfaction scores at different levels. So the Net Promoter Score, but also at the task level, we use CES for that. And I think the most important one is actually just the raw customer feedback, because a lot of customers leave feedback through a lot of channels, through. There's like an online feedback form. There is, the App Store where people can leave reviews. There is a call center where people call and complain about things or talk about things. And we're sort of, just trying to take all of that and read it in. Right now it's still just in the raw. So it's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. But actually, it turns out like sometimes there are really powerful bits of insight just sort of hidden in those in those data sources. And what we're doing now is we're trying to turn all of this into real-time dashboards, so that this is not something that you have to actively go out and look at and think, today I'm going to look at the customer feedback. This should sort of just come at you. We want to end up in a situation where there's also a bit of serendipity, where you just sort of you become aware of, hey, actually, like lately, this score seems to be really going down. Why is that? Or people are beginning to say a lot about this particular topic. Why is that? We sort of want these things to sort of emerge naturally in the minds of these teams, because then they know that hey, maybe we should actually do some. We should focus a little bit more on that. So we're not quite there yet. But I think this is really important, and I actually think that customer journeys as a format are also a really useful tool for this. So basically, the goal of doing all of these things is to end up in a situation where you have this this loop where you get insights, and then you can do something with them. And then you have some different ways of doing stuff. So either you can do a bit of research, or you put it in a pilot, or you actually go out and build it and then launch it and learn from it that way. But we're trying to sort of create some options. And so far it's been a very interesting ride. So I just want to close off by sharing 5 things that we've learned from doing this so far. So I've actually been doing this for about 10 months now, so it's still also fairly new to me. But we've already learned a lot. And I think the first lesson is that it's really important to have this big vision, but not try to sort of, try to boil the ocean. I think Shell also said this really well. Like, it's very tempting to sort of get sucked into these problems and try to solve them all at once. It's not possible. Like you have to have this big vision, but you have to also be able to sort of slice it up into little bite-sized pieces that you can actually digest and work on. So just as an example, we dove into this one particular customer journey. We learned a lot from doing that, making a snapshot of the as-is situations. We found all the pain points. And there were lots. We found a lot of things that could be improved. So here are just 10 things, that we sort of thought of. If this was really the perfect customer journey, what would it look like? Well, we think it would look like this. Like we would need to do these 10 things. But actually, we didn't just go out make a big project that consisted of these 10 things. No, we just chose the 3 most impactful ones, and we did those first. And maybe when you do those, actually the other 10 ideas turn out to be wrong, or maybe the pain point shift. I mean, we don't know. We will only know when we actually do these things and reevaluate. So that's really important. But it's still really important to have that vision. The second thing that we learned is that actually it's really important that this vision should be really a shared thing. You know, it shouldn't be a thing that is from like one designer or from one business person. No, it should be really a collaborative effort. Otherwise, first of all, you always only have a small piece, and it's also not, you know, if not everyone believes in it, or if it's wrong, or if people disagree with it, then it's not going to work. So we always do these things together. We have lots of discussions around it. And that actually works really well. And then the second important thing is that it should also be, you know, shared back, and ideally it should be shared broader than you know, than just the people who are directly responsible for it. So we create these sorts of things. You know, they do really well because you can email them around and put them in PowerPoints. But we also make prototypes that are just, you know, shareable web links, and then we give them to people, and they sort of tend to go, you know, viral through the organization, because people will just, you know, pull out the phone during a meeting and say, hey, did you see this thing? And that actually works really well. And the last thing that we do, which is I think is pretty special at Aegon, is that we have webinars. So these are sort of, you know, because it's such a big company that it's very difficult to talk to people individually sometimes about these things. So they actually have like a full TV studio on the top floor, and I recently got to go there and share some of the work stuff that we're working on, and you get a lot of, you know, you get a lot of feedback from this, because people will think, hey, that actually relates to this other thing that I know. So you kind of, these things sort of have to yeah, get a bit of a life of their own, and generate some interest to work. The third thing that we learned is that it's really important to keep experimenting, and keep trying things that are a little bit more out there, because it's very tempting to sort of, you know, start optimizing, and you don't want to be there. You want to, you know, you don't want to end up in this local maximum. You want to keep sort of trying, like, maybe some crazy things, and maybe find some completely other thing that works much better than you than what you're doing right now.